OOP concepts. So the object-oriented features working with TypeScript, and we learned about the contracts. Have you got the classroom link or no? No classroom link not provided to you. Admin haven't shared. Okay, fine. So I will share that now. I will share the classroom link with you. One second, right? So all our daily classroom notes will be uploaded into this location. And Google Classroom yeah, I am sending in the chat box to all of you people. Once check that. That is the Google Classroom link. So you need to join that. So all our classroom related examples and all will be there. So I already uploaded the till date topics what we discussed into that classroom link. You can verify that. So there I uploaded the basic concepts till now what you have learned. All the topics are in this. So this is our classroom, and in this TypeScript I already uploaded the topics that you have to know in TypeScript. Already we discussed here. So I given here, once go through them, right? So from setting up environment to what you have learned in JavaScript also with examples. Means already you might have learned array manipulations and all. I uploaded the complete reference for that. You can go through these till the contracts concept. Yeah. Right. So once now we are aware of this, already yesterday we discussed about the concept of in TypeScript OOP concepts. I given you an overview on what is a contract, right? So already I told you. So contracts define the rules for designing components. And how contracts are designed? Contracts are designed by using yeah. So contracts are designed by using interface. Yep. So interface contains only rules. Interface contains only rules. And very important here is is it mandatory to implement every rule defined in interface? Is it mandatory to implement every rule defined in interface? Yeah, by default, yes. By default, yes. But actually, while learning the contract, you should know that contract comprises of optional rules also. Contract comprises of optional rules. A contract may contain optional rules also. Generally, why a contract will have optional rules? So, for example, when you are designing any model, when you are designing any module, Generally, for a project, for an application, when you are designing a module, every module have two important points to handle. One is every module is defined with a certain objective, and every module will have a goal. 2 points will be there. Modules will have objective and goal. Generally, I hope you all people know the difference between objective and goal. Objective means, so it is mandatory to achieve. So object is mandatory to achieve. So, and it is time bound. It is time bound. Objective is mandatory to achieve, and it is time bound. It is time bound. Goal is optional. Optional means may or may not achievable. If achieved, it's good. If not, that's okay. So we don't bother much about the goal. Objective must be. That's the reason when you design a component, some rules in a contract can be optional. For example, I will explain a real world. Suppose, so we are defining railway reservation. So that means you take an example of IRCTC, right? Now in this railway reservation, so train availability and reservation and suppose live train status. So three options are there: train availability, reservation, and live train status. In this, which one you can give less priority? That means if it is not there also, it's okay. What do you think? Three options are there. In this, which one you can give as optional? Reservation you will give optional. That means you don't want to do reservation. The main intention of, yeah, live status, very good. Majority of you people got that right. That means if live status of train is not working due to any technical reason, is it okay with that website? Is it okay with that website? Of course, it's okay. But if reservation is not working, then what is the use of that website? Right? So, and train availability is not working, then what is the use of website? So that means some features are not mandatory, but if you have them, that's very good. That means actually this is considered as goal of your module. And the other two are objectives of your module. In real world development, for every module and for entire project also, you will have an objective and goal. For every module also, you will have an objective and goal. Objective, it's mandatory. Goal, optional. That is the reason a contract may contain some optional features, rules also. So you can ignore them. But suppose you see here, I mentioned quantity, or I mentioned some manufactured, MFD. It is any type. Okay. Now our product component is showing problem because manufactured is not mentioned. Manufactured is declared, but it is not handled here. It's mandatory that we have to mention that, because every rule in a contract is mandatory. Every rule in a contract is mandatory. If you want to make that manufactured optional, then you can simply put a question mark here. This makes it optional. This makes it optional. So technically, that is how it makes it optional. So generally, this indicates that it's not mandatory to implement. Mandatory to implement. Yeah, this person is chatting too much in the comment box. Let's talk to him directly. Yes, Kiran, tell me. Yes,
Hello,
Kiran.
sir.
Yes, don't waste your time in so much of message boxes in messages. Okay, just if you have any doubt, raise your hand.
Yeah,
I will get back to you. Okay,
that's okay. The other day you said ignore the red lines, but today we have an error. So what is the difference between that error and this red line?
What do you mean by error?
Yesterday we had
what was
an error.
Have you read that error?
I don't remember exactly. I even posted, but I didn't get any response yesterday.
You have read that error?
No, you didn't. You didn't give a chance to read that.
Have you tried that?
No.
No.
So, that's okay. But that's also a red line, and initially on first day of the class you said ignore red line. So I don't know what's the difference between those two.
Ignoring means that depends on what error it is showing. What error yesterday it showed to us when we used find command? So it showed a red line, right? Error. I said that you can ignore that. Why we can ignore that? Because what was the error stating? Error stating that in ES6, ES5 and higher only this option is available. Understood?
Okay.
Understood? Okay. That means that is it related to any problem in the keywords or anything else, syntaxes?
No, but
that is related to compatibilities, right?
Right.
Understood? Yeah. Understood? Such compatibility errors you can ignore. Understood?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know exactly. Even the first day we had error. So, yeah. But anyway, that's okay. I mean, because I was trying to see what is the difference between those two. So you're saying we have to read the error. That's the only way, right?
In reading also, you have to understand what problem it is showing, right?
Okay.
I hope you got it, right?
Yeah, I got it, but no, it should have been like different. At least for showing side, it should have been different color. Maybe giving it a yellow color or something. For Java or something, if warning is different and error is different, so we should have that kind of difference. That's what I was trying to have.
That is, we have to complain on.
Yeah, TypeScript. I'm not saying you, but
Visual Studio people. Huh?
Oh, Visual Studio.
Okay. I am not responsible.
That's okay. I'm not asking you. I'm not saying you, but if there's any way we could figure out, that's okay. Thanks.
Right. Right. So technically, you find out the error status, what it is giving. If it is related to compatibilities like ES not supporting this option, then you can ignore. That's what we said. If it is related to compatibility, if any syntax problem, then obviously it will not work, right? So you need to check about that. So what the problem it is showing. Now, here, technically, the concept of dealing with optional properties. So in a contract is this question mark. We call this as null reference character. Null reference character. That is null reference character. Null reference character indicates that that particular property can be null. That means it can be ignored. So technically, that is what the point of goal, how you define a goal in your particular contract. So optional rules. You can have one or many optional rules configured and defined inside that. So how to define the optional properties in a contract? Optional properties are defined in a contract. So by using this question mark, and remember this question mark comes immediately after the name property. And before you mention the data type, that is generally the type. So optional rules in a contract. Using it, presenting it, everything same, no change actually. Suppose I want to present these details, then console.log, and I am printing the name, and you know how do we access the name? So that is product dot name. That is general. So that is nothing special in accessing the details and printing the details, because it's an object, and you know how do we access and use the object. So when you are designing a contract, when you are configuring a contract, so the contract comprises of certain rules. So technically it comprises of certain rules. And generally, when you define the rules, so in that rules, this rule can be any type. It can be any type. That means it can be a primitive type. It can be a non-primitive type. That means you can make this, suppose like shipped to, and it is a string type array. We are configuring like a string type array. So we are defining details. Details is an any type. So you can configure any type. That means if you give any, it can handle anything. If you want, you can configure an array. So the rule can be any type. You can configure any type and you can define any type. And how the optional rules are defined? The optional rules are defined so by using question mark. We use the null reference character for that. So in contract, how to define the rules and how you configure the optional rules. That optional rules are defined with a null reference character question mark. Another important, I hope everyone clear. So understood how to define an optional rule, right? Yes. Next is in the contracts, we have read-only rules. We have read-only. A rule can be configured as read-only. In a contract, a rule can be configured as read-only. Configured as read-only. Read-only means you can configure this as any member as read-only. So read-only is nothing but generally once you initialize a value, it will not allow to reassign the values. That's read-only. For example, when you declare a contract related rule, you can mark it as read-only also. When you mark as read-only, it will allow you to initialize a value while implementing. It allows you to initialize. A value. After initializing, so for example, observe here, we initialized these values with some sample data or some data. Later, if I want, so product dot name, I can assign a new value into it. Suppose some leave boot, something like this. And I'm printing this console.log, and I want to print the name. So we can access that product.name and print this. That means it is printing it. So let's run this and see here and open this location. I'm just using a command prompt so that you can see it clearly. You can directly run in terminal. So tsc index.ts, and we have so node index.js. So, and you can see that the name is working fine. It allows you to replace. Now I am trying the same for price. I am trying the same for price. So that means I am trying to replace this price after it is initialized. So product.price and equal to some other price. It's not possible. So after initializing value into it, it will not allow to assign any value into it. It will not allow to assign any value into it because it is marked as read-only in the contract. Read-only in the contract means it allows initializing a value into it. After initializing, it will not allow to reassign any value into this. So by default, all the properties are not read-only. All the properties are not read-only. You can configure that read-only. And that is what actually the read-only is. So that is read-only. Already I told you the difference. So between read-only and constant, I hope you remembered that. So difference between the read-only and constant. Constant is not about changing the value. Constant is about only initializing the value. And read-only is initializing the value, and also assigning the value, preventing that from assigning the value. Constant also will not allow, but that is not its privacy. It is not security. It is its nature that it will not allow assignment. But generally properties can be assigned with a value. They are not constant. If you make it read only, that means they will not allow to reassign any value. So a contract can have read-only properties also. And you see price, it says that cannot assign to price because it is a read-only property. That is how we have to deal with a contract. So contract have rules. So they have optional rules and they have read-only rules. And if it is read-only, so you cannot reassign any value into it after configuring. That is the rules in the contract. Another important point is a contract may contain, so methods also. A contract may contain rules for methods. A contract can contain rules for methods. So technically, you please wait for the topic to be discussed and complete. So if you have any doubt, you simply raise your hand so that I will get back to you. So don't disturb this with all the chat box chatting. Time waste, because I cannot read your chatting while discussing a topic. So if you have a doubt, if you have a question to ask, just raise your hand. I will get back to you and we can talk. Okay? Right. I hope everyone is clear with that. Yes, Rakesh Kumar.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, in the both at the end, we cannot change the value in the both, right? In the read and the constant. Read only and the constant.
Again, you are in the same mindset. I think you don't want to understand the concept in the way how developers need to understand. Huh?
Okay.
You just want to understand in one direction only. Huh? Your way of understanding. You don't want to understand my concept. Huh?
So I want to
What
understand your concept only. Yes.
what is the concept of constant? What is the
Constant.
concept of constant? It is only initializing the values.
Okay.
Understood?
Yes, yes.
Generally, when initialization is mentioned, generally when you expect initialization to happen,
When you have some value, then you can expect.
initialization generally happens when you are allocating the memory for it. Understood?
Okay. Yes, sir.
That means when you are allocating memory, we don't want it to be empty.
Okay.
In that case, we initialize with a value. Understood?
Yes, yes.
Constant's intention is to allocate memory with a value. Understood?
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's not intention to protect your value from changing.
Okay. Yes, yes. Got it. Yes.
Got it? Understood
Yes,
the point?
yes, yes, yes.
That means its intention is to allocate memory with value.
Okay.
Its intention is not to prevent the value from being changed. Okay? That is the reason it is not allowed to assign. Then people generally think that it is read only. Huh?
Yes, yes.
Right. I hope you got the point. Read only means it can be declared. Later you can send some value into it. But that value cannot be changed. Understood?
Okay, okay, got it, got it. Yes, sir, yes. In the
Right.
initially you will have to put the value, so the in the memory.
Initialize.
Now in the later you can put the value here.
Yes, that is what difference. Huh?
Okay, okay, sir.
Right. That is basically how the point of read only and constant difference is that. And a contract can contain rules for methods. A contract can contain rules for methods also. These are the rules for properties. These are the rules for properties. And contract can contain the rules for methods also. That means you defined here. So a method like total. Total is a method. So method means you have to define with a parenthesis and what value it should return. What should be the return type? Generally, the return type, so we have no return type to configure, then we use it as void. So this is the rule for a method. That means now you need to design a total method. So without any return type defined. Suppose if it is configured as number, then you designed a rule for a total method in such a way that total method cannot be written, cannot be designed to return any another type of value. It can be only number. That means that generally object contains, generally that properties are used to store data, and methods are used to define functionality. Functionality is defined in methods. A contract can have the rules for both storing the data and defining the functionality. Contract can have the rules for storing the data and defining the functionality. So you have the total method, and very important, already I told you, contract cannot contain any data, and contract cannot contain any functionality. Contract can contain only the rules for them. So if I try to put a functionality for this method in a contract, it is invalid. Why? Because I hope you people learned about functions in JavaScript and you know very well about the functions in JavaScript. So the point is, suppose we defined a function and function name total, and here we configured some, and you know the concept here, total is some quantity, price, something like this. Now I hope you people know that it is some returning quantity into price. So you know the complete definition for this. This is actually function declaration. This is only function declaration, and this part, total and quantity, this is called as the function signature. It is called as function signature. And what the functionality it is defined. So that means what functionality it is going to handle. That is technically, we call this as definition. That means function have declaration, function have signature, and function have definition. So function have definition. And a contract can define only the signature. It can have return type also. That means return, so number, suppose it is returning number in our TypeScript. So this is the signature actually. This is the signature of the method. This is the signature. And a contract can have only signature. It cannot have declaration. It cannot have definition. It can have only signature. That means in a contract, you cannot define what functionality it should return. So it contains only the signature. The functionality you define here. That means we implement that total, and this total is configured to return a number. So it should return the number. So it will return. So how to access the members in the object, you know, this dot quantity into this dot price. So that is how it is going to return the value. So a contract means an interface can contain the rules for both data and functionality. So for data, you have to just mention the name and its data type. And for methods, you have to define the method name and its return type. You need to configure that. And it should be designed accordingly. It should be implemented accordingly. That's what actually the rules. So for both data and functionality. I hope everyone is clear with this point also. So how to define the rules, how to define optional rules, how to define read-only, how to define the rules for a method. So that is how we can configure. Next important, in the contracts, you should know that extending contracts. So that means we can extend the contracts. Extending contract. A contract can be extended. How you can extend why we need to extend the contracts? So we need to extend the contracts, especially when we are developing multiple versions of application, or when we are extending the modules. Obviously, when you are extending the modules, so you have to extend. So you have to extend the contract also. Technically, we need to extend that also. Anything, I already told you, functions optional or property optional, any optional is defined with question mark. Understood? Whether it may be function, whether it may be property, anything you can configure as optional with a question mark. Okay. So if you want a property optional, you want a method optional, the question mark is enough for that, right? And why we need to extend the contracts? So because when we are developing multiple versions, then without disturbing the existing version, so we need to add some more new features to that. So for example, so I defined interface, and in the interface, so I designed like so version 1, so just version 1. And in this, I defined some options, or say technically, let's take like, so ES suppose 5. That's what I defined. And in this ES5, I defined a property, configured a property. Suppose I specified here as REST parameter. That is a string type. Just one option, one property is defined. And I have interface. So that means IES6. This is having like another property, like map type, map data type. That's also a string. But actually, this ES6, so having this map data type in addition to this REST parameter. That means in previous version we have this, in addition to that, this one also. That means we need to tell that this is the extension of the existing. So generally, you may ask like, why you cannot add this into the first one only? Or why you cannot add everything into the one? Because we cannot do that. So why we cannot do that? Because see, generally, extensibility is the concern actually. Suppose general also, that means, can you say that if a software versions are released, and so will you use always the latest version? What do you say? Will you use always the latest version? Will you use always the latest version? Obviously not. If latest version is having very advanced features, why you are not using latest version? If latest version is having several advanced features, then why you are not using latest version? Why you are not using the latest version? Don't say bugs and issues here, because a version is released only when it is bug free, right? So obviously you are using a successful one, right? So the point is, the point is compatibility with our environment. Understood? The compatibility with our environment. Compatibilities with our environment. For example, so compatibility. For example, you may be using Gmail. Just example, I will tell you. Gmail. So when you are using Gmail, suddenly what happened is, due to some technical issues, so your internet speed slow down. So internet speed slow down. So internet speed may slow down. Then what happens is, if internet speed slow down, so that means you are in low bandwidth now. Low bandwidth is there. Then immediately Gmail says that, I see that your internet speed is not up to the mark, it is slow. And due to that, Gmail will not stop. They will say that, so they will ask you, do you want to switch to HTML mode? Have you seen that? Yeah. Do you want to switch to HTML mode? Right? So that means, what happens in HTML mode? Means that is actually HTML mode means that is legacy. Legacy means old. What happens in HTML mode is nothing but in that mode also you can watch your emails and all, but you will not have more advanced interactions. Advanced interactions like drag and drop and attach the file. Legacy means, legacy means if I want to attach a file, I have to click browse button, select the file and load the file and attach. But if you are using high speed, good speed, if you are using high speed and good speed, then what happens is in the high speed and good speed, you can have better interactions, like you can drag and drop and upload the photos. You can drag and drop, attach the files. You can drag and drop, delete the files, delete the mails, such things. That means if a client is having not suitable environment, we cannot simply stop our application. We must able to reach that legacy devices also. So in that case, we need to design our application that suits to different devices, legacy and modern. Actually, in Angular, you will see that point. In interviews also, they ask this question very regularly. We call this mechanism as differential loading. Differential loading, the mechanism. Differential loading means it will load the library. It will load the library according to, it will load the library according to the browser, device and environment they are using. So it will classify legacy type, modern type, and it will load accordingly. That makes application to reach broad range of devices. So across various devices, it can work. So that is the reason. So you cannot, so that means some people may be using this ES5. Some people may be using this ES6. When they are using ES6, we need to provide this ES5 and ES6 related both features. Then ES6 can extend. You have to use extends. It extends. So ES5 extends ES5. That means now we have a contract, and that contract is ES6. That means generally when you create, suppose, so I'm creating JavaScript legacy. When I create JavaScript legacy, it can implement ES5. It can implement ES5. And according to that, it have to implement REST parameter. REST parameter, so it is nothing but a new parameter. That means it's an object, say, so allows multiple arguments, something like this I define. And somebody may implement, so JavaScript modern. And in that JavaScript modern, he can implement, so ES6, which will have the features ES6. So in ES6, so it will have the features of both. So we have REST parameter. So that means allows multiple parameters, multiple arguments, and another one. So it is map data type, map data type, and this can handle like a key value collection, something like this. We are configuring in this way. That means it keeps cleanly separated. And extendable. So loosely coupled and extendable contracts. So a contract can extend. Another contract. Now, obviously, so many doubts will come actually. So the doubts are nothing but, suppose in this contract also, if I have map data type, that means what will happen? If it is also having map data type, then obviously you have to implement that also until or unless it is optional. So you have to implement that. So if you are having same, then which one it will implement? That means here in JavaScript modern, you are defining map data type and it is coming from the latest one. That means if the same property, same rule repeats, so which rule it will pick up? If the same rule is repeating, the latest one. So whatever the latest one you defined, it will pick up that latest one. There is no question like overriding, nothing, because it's just a contract. And in a contract, whatever the latest rule you defined, it will be configured. And very important here is a contract can extend multiple contracts. A contract can extend multiple contracts. So it can extend multi-level. It supports all the hierarchies. So a contract can extend multiple contracts. That means suppose you also have another one. So an interface. So ES4. And in this I defined operator. And I defined an operator as exponent. It's a string type operator. This is a string type. So generally, now when you define the latest version, and remember, this ES5 can extend. So ES4, it can extend ES4. But if you don't want that, we want ES4 separate, ES5 separate. But the latest one, that means I don't want ES5 to use this ES4. So, but I want ES6 to use both of them. Then obviously it can implement multiple. You can just put a comma and you can say, so ES4. In that case, we have to implement that also here. That means operator, and we say that exponent operator. So this is actually extending of contracts. A contract can be extended by another contract. So a contract can extend multiple contracts. That's the basic approach of defining and working with the contracts. So I hope everyone is clear. Understood? Right? So interfaces, that means the contracts, how you configure and how you define the rules and all. All these examples related to whatever the topic I am discussing, already I given in the classroom. People who lately joined into the class. So one more time, I will ping the classroom ID here. So what is that classroom ID? Again, I need to do that here. So this is your Google Classroom ID. Yes, good. Thank you. And this is the classroom ID. Yeah. So people who lately joined, you can join that. Okay, right. And here, keep everything related to the topics of our concept only. Don't throw any unnecessary comments, or don't try to create any separate groups and all, right? You will be immediately blocked and removed from the classrooms. Okay. So here we will stick only discussion about the concepts, what we are learning, what we are dealing with. Anything else, so you comment or post or do anything additional activities there, you will be removed from the sessions as well as from the classroom also. So please take care about that in the classrooms. Okay, right. And I hope you are clear with the contracts. So you understood what is a contract and how do we work with the contracts. Fine. Next, after understanding the contracts, so because your JavaScript don't have the contracts, so we have to know about the contracts in TypeScript. Next, after understanding the contracts, now understanding about the contracts. Next, so class. And of course, contracts and classes. So what is a class? How do we configure? We will see the relations also, step by step, implementing with them. Technically, now we need to understand what is a class. And already, you know, in object-oriented programming, so how you define a class. In object-oriented programming, you learned in JavaScript also, how you define a class, how you define a class. Means I am asking that what is a class in object-oriented programming? Class in object-oriented programming. Yeah. Blueprint. Okay. Several blueprints are there. Okay, good. Fine, right. So let's keep that here. So, okay, let's keep it technically in a correct way. Actually, in computer programming, computer programming, class is a program template. Class is a program template. Class is a program template. That is the correct definition about the class. I will justify all other your terms also. You will understand that point. But primary definition, what is a class? Means as a developer, you should say class is a program template. Program template. Now, what is a template? So what is a template? Why it is called as a template? What is a template? Template is nothing but in computing architecture. Template comprises of sample data, and functionality. So which you can implement, and customize according to your requirements. So template comprises of sample data and functionality which you can implement and customize according to your requirements. That is what actually the concept of template. So class is a program template used by developers to implement and not to exactly use in the same way, but customize according to the requirements and handle them. That's general. Actually, class is a program template. And remember, class have several behaviors actually. That means, for example, so we have some data. So we have some database or some data. So we have some data. Okay. And we have some business logic, or you say business requirements, business logic or business requirements. Actually, so according to this business requirements, so better say business requirements, according to the business requirements, so the data is prepared, the data is designed according to the business requirements. Now we have created a template. This template has two different concepts. Now, actually, if this template is directly representing the data you are working with, if the template is directly representing the data to communicate with the data, and it is representing what is there in the data. So that means what fields are there, what content is there. If it is directly representing the data, then usually anything in computing architecture, which is representing data, is known as model. It is known as model. It is known as a model. So that means anything that is representing the data is called as a model. If it is not representing directly the data, if it is representing the business requirements, but for that business requirements, data will be designed. But our template is not directly representing the data, it is representing the business requirements. Then usually we call this as entity. Entity. So if a template is designed, not for business requirements or data, if a template is designed not for business requirements or data, it is just designed for reusable concerns with customization and reusable concerns, then you call this as a blueprint. Then you call this as a blueprint. That means the point here is the template is a class. That means class is a template. Now tell me, is a class model every time? Is a class model every time? Is a class model every time? I hope you got my point now. Understood? That means I hope you understood, because when I say what is a class, some people said class is a model. Some people said class is a blueprint. Some people say class is an entity. All the points are true about class. All the points are true about class, but class is not that. Class is a template only. But class have three behaviors. It have an entity behavior, it have a model behavior, it have a blueprint behavior. Sometimes in the class, we define certain rules also. That means in the class, we mention some implementation rules. In class, we define some implementation rules. If we define some implementation rules in a class, then it is called as type. That means you call as user defined type or something else. It is called as type. That means class is a user defined type, class is an entity, class is a model, class is a blueprint. Everything is good, but not every time class is entity, not every time class is model, not every time class is type, and not every time class is blueprint. I hope everyone understood that. Is it clear? Right? I hope you got a clarity. That means class is not a blueprint every time. So it is not an entity every time. It is not a model every time. So when a class is called entity, what do you say? When a class is called as so class is called entity when it is representing the business. Good. When it is representing the business. Right. Good. When it is representing the business. That's what I showed you, na? Entity model. I showed you that entity model is representing the business, but it is not having the data. Data is present in the database tables. And if your class is representing the data, then it is called as a model, right? So whatever you said about class is correct. Knowingly or unknowingly, you said some good, correct points only. But I have noticed that you correctly don't know what is a class, right? So you know that it is called entity or model or a blueprint, but you don't know why it is called as a model and when it is called as a model or an entity or a blueprint or a type. I hope now at least you got a clarity on that, right? So class is a program template, right? Now, generally, that is the key concept to understand. Fine. So these are all general, any OOP concepts. This point is the same and to handle and understand, right? So already type means you saw class if it contains rules like a contract. If class contains rules like a contract and it tells that, so these are the things you need to implement. If it contains rules like a contract, then it is used as a type. Understood? Just like how you used this interface, so you can define that. But class have a larger scope. What is that larger scope? We will discuss about that. That means now we need to learn some more important points here. Now, how you configure the class. So that means how you can define the class. That means, so class, to design class in JavaScript or in TypeScript. So class have two techniques. So we have class declaration. We have class declaration and we have class expression. In JavaScript and in TypeScript, so class declaration and class expression, 2 points are there. That means generally in JavaScript and in TypeScript, how you configure the class, 2 ways are there. One is class declaration. Class declaration is just we use the keyword class and the class name. Class name is product and the members of the class. Another one is class expression. That means LET. So category is equal to class and it have some functionality, means this definition. So here the class is not having any name. This is called class expression. We call this as class expression. So a class can be defined in 2 ways. We have a class declaration and class expression. What is difference between these two? So the difference between these two is actually in the first state. So you configured a class and defined the class. Generally, this class that you have configured is loaded into memory. It is loaded into memory. And after loading into memory, so that class can have some functionality defined. That functionality we can customize and we can change. So we can customize and we can change. We can customize and change. Right. So generally, you can customize and change. The functionality we can customize and change. But what is the intention of defining a class expression? Defining a class expression is nothing but to configure a class in such a way so that it cannot be modified or customized later. For that kind of situation, so we configure the class as an expression. I will show you that technically. So of course you might have learned in JavaScript, but I will show you the situations we will discuss about that. Class expression is used when we want to define a class that cannot be changed dynamically. That means that cannot be changed dynamically. That is the intention of class expression. And not only that, several other points also we will come. So we will discuss about that. And the class declaration, it is customizable. So it can be customized according to the requirement. Dynamically, it can change. So because generally, you know that when you declared anything as a variable, like with a variable reference, when you define, these are immutable types. These are immutable. That means you cannot change the structure according to the situation. But this can change according to the situation. So class declaration. So this is very rarely you will see, but that is also an option. So that is also a technique of configuring the class for different environments. You will regularly see the class declaration concept only. But class expression is used to design an immutable class. Immutable class. If you want an immutable class to configure, so then you can use class expression. So mutable, that is class declaration. Always we want the class majority of the times mutable, because I said that it is a template. It's a template means its intention is to allow to change. Mutable means it can change. Immutable means it cannot change. So I hope at least this you learned in JavaScript also, right? So that means this is basically how you configure the class, defining and working with the class. So two techniques are there. One is class expression and class declaration. And what a class can contain, technically what a class can contain, how we can define. So class can contain, that means class members. A class comprises of only 4 members. So a class can contain property, a class can contain a method, a class can contain an accessor, and a class can contain a constructor. Anything else other than this is not supported in a class. So class can have only these members. A class can have properties, methods, accessors, and constructor. Anything else other than that is not allowed in a class. These are only the members of class. So class can have properties, methods, accessors, constructors, nothing else. For example, if anybody asks suppose this is a class. So class product is a class. If anyone asks can we declare a variable in class? Can declare a variable in class? Can we declare a variable in class? No. You cannot declare a variable in class. Variables are not allowed in a class. So can we declare a function in class? Can we declare a function in class? So no, you cannot have a function also in class. You cannot have variables, you cannot have functions in a class. Actually, so you see here in a class, I said let x equal to 10. So it's not supported. It's not allowed. You cannot declare. Because already I clearly told you and showed you that class can contain only these 4. Anything else, nonsense, not allowed. Don't even think about them. If anybody asks is this possible? Is this can be in the class? If he is asking anything other than these 4, that's simply not possible. Class will not allow anything else other than property or a method or an accessor or a constructor. Only these 4. Now you see the same thing it says, set unexpected token. A constructor or a method or an accessor or a property was expected. That means anything else is not allowed. You can have a variable outside the class. So actually, the scope outside the class is considered as, we generally call the scope outside the class is considered as module. The module scope. The scope outside the class is module. Later in module system, I will show you that point. And you can have a variable outside the class. So that means outside the class, the data is stored. Outside the class, data is stored in a variable. So Nike casual. Suppose its data type is string and it's stored with some Nike casual, something like this. Like this. That is inside a variable. That means you are configuring that inside a variable data. And inside the class, data is stored. Data is stored. So in a property, data is stored in a property. Now, obviously, the question will come in interviews like, what is difference between variable and property? What is difference between variable and property? That means that is a general question for JavaScript learners also. That means what is difference between variable and property? So what is difference between variable and property? Why variable is not allowed in the class? So many questions may become. Why variable is not allowed in class? So that means a lot of questions are there to wire up here, right? So one to another, lot of wired up questions will come. So what is difference between variable and property? Same concept. Variables are immutable. Variables are immutable. That's what you have to tell in interviews. Variables are immutable. Immutable means you cannot change the structure. Cannot change the structure dynamically. That means according to the state and the situation, the structure cannot change for a variable. But properties are mutable. That means they can change according to the situation. The structure can change according to the situation. That's what actually the properties are. That is the reason. The point is, so why variable is not allowed in the class? If anyone asks this, and you learn these 2 points, and if anyone asks why variable is not allowed in class, what is your answer? Why variables are not allowed in a class? If anyone asks that, what will be your answer? They are immutable, so we cannot change them, right? They cannot change. Is it matters anything if it is inside class? It is immutable, it's okay. Is it matters anything if it is inside the class? What matters if it is inside the class? What matters if it is inside the class? Because as we said that class is a template, am I right? Remember that point, everyone? Class is a template. Then template should allow to change and customize according to the requirement. Understood? A template should allow to change according to the requirement. If a template should allow to change according to requirement and variable cannot allow to change according to requirement, that is the reason it is not supported in a class. Understood? So variables are not supported in a class because they will not allow to change according to the situation. That is the main reason. That is the reason why variables are not allowed in a class. Why only properties are allowed in a class. And not only that, actually properties have more than variable. Properties have authorized access, can have authorized access. Properties can have authorized access. A property can have authorized access. Authorized access means, the point here is variables cannot have authorized access. So properties can have an authorized access. Authorized access is nothing but, for example, if I made any property, if I made any variable or anything, suppose this is name, and can we restrict the name in such a way that value cannot be stored into it? That means, can we restrict the variable in such a way that value cannot be stored into it? What do you say? Can we restrict variable in such a way that so later value cannot be assigned into it? Can we restrict like that? Can we restrict like that? Variable don't have read only, na? Variable don't have any read only, right? And one more point is, you can make it constant, right? You can make it constant. But already I told you that, so constant, if I make it constant, it will not allow to render the value into it. Am I right? I cannot render the value into it. That means now the point is, suppose I have some city. City is a string type property. And you have two users. One is customer and another one is admin. We have two users. Now both have access to this city. Both have access to this city. But important is, admin is the user. Admin is the user who can change the city. Who can change city. But customer cannot change the city. He can only view, only read. He cannot change it. Only read. He cannot change it. Then tell me how to declare it now. Can tell me how to declare it. So can I use constant? Can I use constant? If I use constant, is it possible for admin? If I use constant, is it possible for admin to change? It's not possible. You cannot use constant. You cannot use constant. I hope at least now you understood why constant is not read only. Understood? Huh? Constant is not read only. Why constant is not read only? It's not about read only. That means now I want this city in such a way that for one user, it should allow to change. For another user, it should not allow to change. Allow to change. That means we need a fine control over that particular property. And that can be done on properties, not can be done on variables. If it is a property, you can handle this. If it is a property, you can handle this by using accessors. Accessors. We have a getter and we have a setter. By using this getter and setter accessors, we can have an authorized access for the property. Properties can have an authorized access. Variables cannot have an authorized access. Authorized access means for one situation, it should allow to read and write. But in one situation, it will allow to only read. That means it can change according to the situation. It can change according to the situation. That is the difference between a variable and a property. Properties can have an authorized access. So variables cannot have an authorized access. How they can have an authorized access, we will see that. Practically, we will implement an example. We will see how it can have an authorized access. Actually, this is in your JavaScript also. This, because JavaScript classes also same. So everything same, no change. TypeScript and JavaScript classes, class members, their accessibilities, difference between variable and property, everything same in JavaScript also. OOP concepts are same. So class related, all the basics are same, no change actually. That means now properties can have a fine grain control. You can have a fine grain control on this particular property. So how we can do that? With the help of accessors. By using accessors, we can manage that. Now, technically, what is accessor, what is a constructor, and what is a method, and what is a property? How do we configure them? These are all general things related to class. So we need to know. And the same like JavaScript only. I will give you a glance of these options and types of members, how you configure them. What is different from JavaScript, we will discuss. Because accessors and class and the members in the class, same as JavaScript only, no change. But some changes in this TypeScript classes, they have static members, they have access modifiers. We need to learn extra. JavaScript don't have any static members and access modifiers to configure, but in TypeScript we have that. Rest of options are same. Now, first we need to understand what are accessors, properties, methods, and constructor. Then how they are different from JavaScript, we will see that. We will discuss in our next session. Okay, tomorrow we will discuss about that. So in tomorrow's session, we will see working with classes and various new concepts related to classes. Okay, tomorrow we'll continue with that. Bye. Yes, Vinit Kumar. Okay, then let's continue tomorrow. Thank you.